Today I want to introduce you to the woman who would become the inspiration for my Unforgotten series. It started several years ago while researching my stepfather's side of the family when I came across a conundrum that took me literally 5 years to solve. It begins with my step-great-grandmother, Edith Lenora Sauser. Edith was the daughter of Paul Frederick Sauser and Orpha Annette Schoonover. They were married in Johnson County, Iowa, the 27th of July, 1911. According to her birth certificate, she was born October 7th, 1911, in Prairieburg, Lynn County, Iowa. Paul was 23 and Orpha was 28. Edith was born after just 2.5 months of marriage. As I began to work my way up her tree, I came across an article published 3 years before her birth mentioning her father, Paul Sauser. It was a plea for divorce by a Margaret Sauser who claimed abuse and wanted custody of their 1-year-old daughter, Edith Lenora Sauser. The Courier, page 3, Waterloo, Iowa, Monday, 30th of March, 1908, reads, Margaret Sauser has instituted suit for divorce against Paul Sauser, alleging cruel and inhuman treatment. She says in her petition that she and her husband were married at Bowbells, North Dakota, November 23, 1905. She is at present living at 503 Columbia Street, and she asks the court to grant an injunction restraining the defendant from molesting her. Judge Platt granted the temporary writ as prayed. Besides asking for a decree of divorce, the plaintiff asks for the custody of their only child, Edith Lenora, 1 year old. I immediately began investigating this Margaret, but couldn't find a marriage record on Family Search or Ancestry. I also began looking for records for an Edith Lenora Sauser, born 1907, and all the results were either completely wrong or records that I knew were my Edith Lenora Sauser, born in 1911. Years would pass by before I thought to search beyond Ancestry and Family Search. This time, I turned to Google and searched for archived marriage records in North Dakota, and I ended up at the State Historical Society. I did a vague search, only entering Sauser for the groom's last name, and then the year 1905, and got exactly 1 hit. Groom, last name Sauser, first name Paul, middle initial F. Bride, last name Batty, first name Margaret. Marriage date November 25th, 1905. Ward County, North Dakota. Notice this tells us Paul's middle initial is the same as my Paul Frederick. The next information I found were 2 Waterloo, Iowa city directory entries for Paul F. Sauser, wife Margaret V., for the year 1906 when he worked for the Iowa Dairy Separator Company, and 1908 when he was listed as a Boilermaker. By 1910, I find Paul F. Sauser living in Boulder, Lynn County, Iowa, with his brother John M. Sauser. His marital status was marked D for divorced. I then began looking for Margaret V. Batty. I found her in the 1900 census as Viola M. Batty, aged 12, birth state Illinois, the daughter of James W. and Edith Batty, living in Whitewater, Dubuque County, Iowa. And in the 1905 Iowa State Census, she's enumerated in Cascade, Dubuque, Iowa, as Margaret V. Batty, listed with J.W. Batty, now widowed. I then find 2 obituaries for Margaret's mother Edith, who had died in 1902, and it creates more questions than answers. The first obituary is from page 5 of the Monticello Express, dated the 11th of December 1902, and states, Mr. and Miss Batty had no children of their own, but their hearts were full of sympathy for the little ones who were without parental care. and the second obituary from page 5 of the Cascade Pioneer, published in Cascade, Iowa on Friday, December 12, 1902, goes on to name the foster children as Margaret Batty, Mildred Rafferty, Murda Davidson, Elon Rafferty, and Lenny Shotwell. I searched and searched for Margaret Viola Batty Sauser in the 1910 census, but could find no trace of her, or one-year-old baby Edith Lenora Sauser mentioned in the 1908 article. I kept searching and found a marriage record in Jackson County, Missouri on the 21st of December, 1918, for a Margaret V. Batty, born in 1888, to a Charles Pratt. I decided to look for them in the 1920 census to see if this Margaret was also born in Illinois. And sure enough, they're living in Kansas City, Jackson, Missouri, and she is indeed born in Illinois. But there's no Edith Lenora, born in 1907. It is only Charles and Margaret Pratt. I continued to search for this couple and discovered that sadly, 2 years later, Margaret died from pulmonary tuberculosis. Her death certificate goes on to list her parents as David E. Glenn and Mary L. Clark. I began to second-guess myself. Maybe this isn't the right woman after all. But when I find the obituary for Margaret, I get some answers. And more questions. Page 4, Cascade Pioneer, Thursday, November 30th, 1922, reads, Death of Miss Charles Pratt. Marguerite Viola Pratt was born in Morvia, Illinois, March 10, 1888, and died at her home in Cascade, Iowa, November 25, 1922, age 34 years, 8 months, and 15 days. She was the adopted daughter of David E. and Mary L. Glenn of Scotch Grove, Iowa. Upon the death of her foster mother, Grandma Clark being unable to care for her, she was when 2 years of age in the year 1890 adopted by Mr. and Miss J.W. Batty, who cared for her and educated her. On December 21, 1918, she was united in marriage to Charles W. Pratt in Kansas City, Missouri. In February 1919, she had an attack of influenza from which she never entirely recovered. Soon after her marriage, she, with her husband, joined the West Branch of the Baptist Church, Kansas City, where they have both continuously retained their membership. For the last few months, she has suffered untold agony, and all that the medical skill could apply, loving hearts plan and willing hands perform, were of no avail. There lived to mourn her loss her husband and her father. So now, I don't know who Margaret's birth parents were, and I don't know why baby Edith Lenora from 1907 wasn't with her in 1920 or mentioned at all in her obituary. Did Paul get custody? Was my Edith actually 4 years older? Did they falsify records? Was her birth certificate accurate? Was Orpha Schoonover not her mother after all? Or, more likely, maybe the first Edith Lenora Sauser died. Babies died often back then. I could find no birth record or death record no matter how much I searched. I laid everything aside and decided to come back later. Maybe a few days would give Ancestry's algorithms a chance to catch up to all the new information. When I came back, there weren't any accurate hints. They were all records for my grandmother, born in 1911. But I hit search one last time and noticed a find a grave record that came up for an Edith Sauser born in 1906 and died 24th of March, 1930 in Oklahoma County, Oklahoma. I feel this is unlikely to be her so far away, but the inscription on her stone makes me decide to dig a little further. It reads, Even though alone through life, not forsaken in death. Edith Sauser, mother, born 1906, died 1930. I decided to once again turn to old newspapers, and the pieces began to finally fall into place and her tragic story unfolds. Edith had been adopted in 1908 to a Mr. and Mrs. A.B. Hecht, according to an article I found in the Waterloo Daily Courier, dated July 3rd, 1908. It reads, 2-year-old girl adopted into new home. Articles of adoption were filed this morning in the recorder's office. The instrument gives Mr. and Miss A.B. Hecht as their own child, Edith Sauser, 2-year-old daughter of Mr. and Miss Paul Sauser, the mother now residing in East Waterloo Township. The parents of the child were divorced in District Court of Black Hawk County on May 31st of this year, and the present address of the father is unknown. In the divorce proceedings, the mother was given possession of the little girl. The articles of adoption recite that the name of the child shall hereafter be Hazel Edith Hecht, and that she enters into all the rights and privileges as though born to Mr. and Mrs. Hecht in lawful wedlock. 2 months later, a pair of articles found running back-to-back in the Semi-Weekly Reporter give us a little more insight into this story. The first article reads, Brown must flee town. Miss Brown, who sometimes calls herself Molly, sometimes Nellie, sometimes Jenny, sometimes Bessie, and sometimes just Brownie, was taken into custody last night together with Margaret Batty. The girls were entertaining a party of boys on the street, and a charge of vagrancy was lodged against them. Both were found guilty as charged and sentenced to 30 days in jail on bread and water with the privilege of leaving town forever. Both chose the latter course. Miss Brown is not unknown to the police, and recently was investigated for carrying a loaded revolver, a street railway motorman being the complaining witness. The very next article beneath reads, Woman would reform. Miss Margaret Batty, who was jailed last night on a charge of vagrancy, has convinced a desire to forsake the ways of the transgressor. The girl is 21 years old and has a little babe to care for, her husband having left her and the little tot. She was ordered to leave town this morning or serve 30 days in jail. This afternoon, she asked for a conference with Judge Kepford, and to him she intimated a desire to do better. It was her own suggestion that she be given an opportunity. Margaret said she would get a job at once and would conduct herself properly at all times and report once a week to the police judge and give an account of her whereabouts, work, and general behavior. Mr. Kepford is inclined to give the young woman a chance. Although it should be noted that Margaret's troubles with the law were reported in September 1908, 2 months after giving little Edith up for adoption in July. I would also like to make note that other articles dated 1904 in North Dakota can be found where a Violet Batty and a Kate Brown get in trouble for vagrancy while hanging out with a snake eater from the local carnival named Bosco Kelly. But Margaret's story is a tale for another time. It's now 1910, and Edith Sauser, now going by the name Hazel Hecht, is enumerated with her new parents Albert and Maud, an older brother Kent, as well as a roomer named Irma Mills. They are living on Locust Street in Waterloo, Iowa. Because I feel her story is so important, I want to take the time to point out a few details that we can see from this particular census record. First, notice highlighted in blue where this is Albert's second marriage and Maud's first. Then, highlighted in pink, is the columns asking how many children had been born and how many were still alive. Maud is not Kent's mother. He was born to Albert and his first wife, Minnie Spike. Iowa birth records indicate that Albert and Maud did, however, have a baby girl named Mary Elizabeth in April 1895, but by May she had sadly passed away. Whether the number 2 indicates Kent or Hazel, we may not know for sure, but considering Maud is also marked INF for informant, leads me to believe she was counting Hazel. In 1912, however, Albert's wife and Hazel's new mother, Maud, tragically passes away from meningitis. Notice that her husband, Albert, worked for the same company Paul Sauser did in the 1906 Waterloo, Iowa City Directory. Her obituary reads, "Sudden illness ends in death. Miss Albert Hecht passed away today. Funeral will be held Sunday afternoon at the house." Miss Albert Hecht, who had been sick since Wednesday night with cerebral infection caused by a gathering in her ear, passed away this morning at 10:30 at the home 315 Locust Street. As she had made many friends through her kindly interest in those around her, many will feel deep sadness at her sudden death. Maud Hauser was born in Ida Grove, October 24th, 1876, and was married there 15 years ago to Albert Hecht. Previous to coming to Waterloo 8 years ago, they had lived in Sioux City. Mr. Hecht is employed here with the Iowa Dairy Separator Company. One little girl, Hazel, and a stepson, Kent Hecht, are left to mourn her loss, and also 2 sisters and 1 brother. By January of 1920, Albert Hecht had left Iowa and was remarried to a woman named Jessie. The new family is now living in Pomona, Los Angeles County, California. This time, Hazel isn't listed as his daughter, but instead as his adopted daughter. In June of that same year, Hazel Edith Hecht graduated 6th grade from Washington Elementary. And the very next year, at the tender age of 14, an announcement is made of the marriage of Hazel Hecht to Althea O. Hart, a newspaper man working for the Pomona Press originally from Enid, Oklahoma. The Lahoma Sun, Friday, 23rd September 1921, announces Hart Hecht wedding. Announcement is made of the marriage of Miss Hazel Hecht, daughter of Mr. and Miss A.B. Hecht, 276 West Holt Avenue, to Althea O. Hart, son of Mr. and Miss J.W. Hart of Enid, Oklahoma. The wedding took place in San Bernardino, the couple being accompanied by Mr. and Miss Hecht. Mr. Hart is in the employ of the Pomona Progress, Pomona, California. The bridegroom in the above wedding needs no introduction to Lahoma folks. He was a student in the Lahoma schools. He received his first training at the printers in the Lahoma Sun office, and for a short time in 1918 was its editor. He left here for California a few months over a year ago. As it would turn out, Althea was to become a pretty prolific and well-known newspaper photographer. Because of this, we have the following picture he must have taken while he and Hazel were dating. This marriage would be short-lived, missing the 7-year itch by 1 year, when the marriage ended in 1927. According to an article in the McCurtain Gazette, a simple divorce decree was granted in Garfield County. I can only find a one-line statement published in the Enid Daily Times, dated September 3rd, 1927, that simply says, "Hart versus Hart, divorce granted." She is only 21. 3 months later, in the neighboring county of Noble, once again going by the name Edith Sauser and living in the Rock Island Hotel, the following advertisement is made in the Billings News. For sale, Canary, good singer. Inquire at Rock Island Hotel, Edith Sauser. After this, we come to the culmination of her life in a series of articles that detailed her last few years, when all the papers began reporting her self-inflicted death by poison. She ended up in Oklahoma City, working as a waitress at the Topic Cafe, located at the 200th block of West California Avenue, right below where she lived in the Oliver Hotel. In January 1929, she had given birth to an invalid son at Holmes' Home of Redeeming Love in Oklahoma City. Edith struggled to make ends meet, and with a life filled with one unimaginable heartbreak after another, Her depression was too much to bear. The stress and struggle led to her own failing health. She was a waitress making $16 a week. Because of sympathy and her good nature, her employer, C.C. Whiteside, paid her more than the going rate. But life was just too cruel, because even when you're making more than the average waitress, without any kind of familial support, she was unable to provide and care for her young son while also working enough to earn the money they desperately needed, causing Children's Service Bureau to take him. I imagine that was the last straw, and she decided to end her life by drinking poison. Her last words, "I'm to blame for everything." There were no shortages of articles published in the month after her death detailing her sad life story. Edith just so happened to have kept a scrapbook with clippings of all her memories, most of which were painful. They told the story of her life. The last entry in her scrapbook was reported as being a flimsy that said, "Get the hell out of Oklahoma." And I guess she chose suicide as her way out. As the news brought to light tragedy after tragedy, everyone became aware of her heartbreak. They shared it, and it reverberated throughout the community. Even though she was destitute and could only have afforded to be given a pauper's burial, the funeral home, Marshall and Harper, chose to donate her casket and shroud, as well as pay for her burial plot. One woman in the community tragically remembered Edith had answered an advertisement she placed for a housekeeper, and now she regretted she hadn't offered her the job. One thing was abundantly clear. Edith loved her son and was doing all she could to provide for him. It's my greatest hope that this somehow reaches someone who can help me find him, something that will carry her story another generation further. What was her son's name? What was his fate? In coming to my blog to polish it up before turning it into a video, I actually made a remarkable discovery. Edith's story caused the public to look more intently into her invalid son, and according to an article in the Oklahoma News, happy home is assured baby of suicide girl. The 14-month-old boy of Edith Sauser will have a good home and a chance in life. This was the pledge made Thursday by C.C. Day, president of the Children's Home Service Bureau Board. Despite reports made by the county's social service board that the child was an invalid, the baby is normal, both physically and mentally, said Day. The baby is being cared for by the Bureau. It will soon be in a proper healthy condition to furnish assurance of a normal life. Day said that couples who want a wonderfully sweet baby should leave their applications with the Children's Service Bureau. When the baby is ready for adoption, workers will carefully investigate each home and place the child where he will have the best opportunity in life. The child's mother, Edith Sauser, committed suicide because she was unable to earn enough to care for the child. She was buried in Sunny Lane Cemetery Tuesday. So here's to a woman whose history and existence was only to be found in newspapers for those who would take the time to connect the dots. And I'm so glad I did. If her son survived and has heirs, I hope they one day find this information. I have no idea what his name was, first or last, or who his father was. Below are a picture side by side of my great-grandma Edith and her half-sister by the same name, as well as a picture of their father in later years.